I've got the brand new Outlaw Rampage from Kyosho in studio. Let's open this thing up and see how cool this new platform is. And I'd love to hear your comments on this platform. Is it a hit or is it a miss from Kyosho? Rich here from the RCNetwork.com, and today we have a pretty cool unboxing of the brand new Kyosho Outlaw Rampage. This, of course, is their newest 1/10 scale two-wheel drive electric truck. And what's so cool about this is the suspension system being an independent front suspension and a solid rear axle. Now this truck does come as a ready set vehicle, so it does come with everything you need to start on day one. You just have to supply your own AA batteries for the remote. With that being said, it does come in two different colors, with the blue version and also the white. Taking a look at the side of the box, we have a pretty cool little electronics package, including a Team Orion LiPo compatible ESC. It does have a 15-turn Kyosho motor and a included nickel metal hydride battery with a full Dean's connector. You do get the charger and of course the tried and proven Kyosho Synchro remote. Looking at the suspension system, we have some pretty large capacity shocks. Of course, the front suspension is like a gull wing design that you'd see on a real Baja style truck. Wheels and tires are pretty standard, using 12mm hexes, has a pretty cool battery holder, and finally you can kind of see the stance right here of the chassis with the trailing arm suspension. Finally, the last cool thing right here is you do get a different suspension link setup in the box. You actually get some shorter links that are going to provide a different platform in the future. Yes, Kyosho is going to be building off this platform with possibly some on-road cars and some other pretty cool things. So this is going to be a very cool idea to possibly shorten the wheelbase. Alright, so enough of that stuff. Let's crack this thing open, see what we get inside the box. Before we get to the Outlaw Rampage, let's take a look at some of the supplement items that come inside the box. Starting with the owner's manual, it's pretty well laid out. It has all the different detailed explanations and some exploded views, and also all the parts listings. So you have to order something, you know exactly what the part number is. You get a bind plug and antenna tube, some additional pistons for your shocks. These do appear to be machined pistons, and a selection of 1.2 4-hole and 1.4 4-hole pistons. You get a bag of tools with also some body clips. You get some shorter trailing arms for the rumored different chassis lengths that I talked about earlier. You get a taller body mount, possibly for the rear, maybe for some rally car inspired bodies coming soon. Since I chose the white version and it comes with a Ford inspired grille, it also comes with a Chevy inspired grille, including the light buckets and everything to mount this grille to the truck. You get a boxed trickle charger for the included nickel metal hydride battery. Speaking of which, you get the Team Orion 1800 milliamp 6-cell nickel metal hydride battery. It does come with a included Dean's connector. You're able to start running on day one. And finally, the Kyosho Synchro KT231P Plus. This is actually a pretty decent remote. I love how the ergonomics of this are turned slightly inward. Has all of your trims, dual rates, and everything you'd want on a standard RTR radio. The feel of it's great. I love the rubber grip on the rear of it. And there it is, the Kyosho Outlaw Rampage. Now, I just love the white color of this thing. It just really seems to pop, and I love the styling. Has that kind of old school F-150 look to it from Ford. Although it's not an officially licensed body, I actually appreciate that because we're not paying the premium as consumers to get that licensing. Of course, anytime a manufacturer licenses something, they pass the cost down to the consumer to get that licensing. So keeps the cost down, but it still has the cool look that we're all looking for in our RCs. As you start to look at the Outlaw Rampage, you're starting to notice some pretty similar items. Now, this is almost the exact same size as an Axial SCX-10 or SCX-10-2. It has that same size and scale look. It does use 1.9-inch plastic beadlock wheels, and it has a very nice rubber tire that has a very firm insert inside. So it's almost like it has like either a dual dual stage or a single stage foam on the inside of these tires. As we start to look at wheelbase, just a quick measurement from axle to axle, we're looking at right under 13 inches. So typical SCX 10 is about 12.3. So this is just slightly longer, but it's still within the parameters of certain racing leagues. And of course, being an independent front suspension and solid rear axle, it'll definitely have its benefits. Speaking of the front independent suspension, you can really see the gull wing style arms on the front, very Baja 1000 inspired. It has just a cool look to it, and the suspension travel is just absolutely amazing. This thing can really squat down and just will absolutely do great running this thing in a real scale environment. More notable items on the front end, of course, is this pre-runner style bumper, including light bucket holders right here. So you can mount standard light buckets. Kyosho will have a kit available. It's actually the same one off the Turbo Scorpion. They just mount light buckets straight onto this thing and wire straight up to your receiver. Also included is the molded plastic grill, including light buckets and lenses that look like the old school halogens. You just simply mount up a 5mm LED, bolts right in. Looking at the rear end of the Outlaw Rampage, you are seeing that solid axle rear. Now, it's not the most scale axle. It is very functional and it is very thick. It uses a very hard plastic, and you're also seeing the rear tailgate and also the light decals. No buckets in the rear. It would have been nice to have buckets, but I understand keeping the cost slightly down. Taking the body off, we can see the light buckets that are pre-installed, just ready for some 5mm LEDs. Now, I've got to say that the screen printing job on this is very nice. All of the graphics and the logos in the exterior are all screen printed, so pretty nice. And especially if you're going to be rough with it, nothing's going to really rub off because it's screen printed from the inside. So all of these kind of rainbow graphics right here, the Outlaw Rampage, the two-wheel drive rear solid axle logo is all screen printed. And finally, a look at the chassis here. Now, this thing is pretty cool, and I was just cycling the suspension earlier just to see how this thing all handles, and I mean, it is just so smooth. Looking at the front suspension, the lower control arms are just absolutely huge. They're pretty thick as well. You do have upper control arms and like a C-hub style design right here, and then of course the knuckle. Now, this is a two-wheel drive vehicle, so there's no axles in the front, of course. Flipping it over, you can really see how wide those lower control arms are, and they're super thick. I've got to say, this is a pretty cool design. I mean, this is about 2.5 inches wide on these lower control arms. Now, to keep the cost down, of course, is the plastic bodied shocks right here. They do appear to be standard 12mm shocks and a pretty standard size. So you should be able to find pretty easy replacements for these to upgrade to aluminum, but Kyosho will also have an upgrade package for these out soon. Moving towards the front right here, we have a center mounted steering servo that uses a traditional 1/10 scale two-wheel drive buggy style setup for the bell cranks and also the sliding rack. So it all pretty much maneuvers inside of there, and it does a pretty good job. You do have a battery box right here in the center that just basically goes sideways on the vehicle. You're able to fit a standard 2S style stick pack inside of there, but anything larger would be a definite issue. You do have the mounting right here for the ESC and a pretty nifty little ESC plug that's solid mounted to the side, so simply plugging in your battery, it's a pretty easy job. You have a very large receiver box right here, actually extremely large, and the on-off switch is mounted here in the very rear. Looking at the rear suspension and linkage, this thing is just so smooth. I mean, there's so much suspension travel, and you do have these long trailing arms right here leading up to the solid axle rear. These upper links do appear to be aluminum. They have a cold feel to them. I don't think they're stainless steel. They feel a little bit too light for stainless steel. Now, the only kind of scale bummer on this truck is the rear mounted motor and transmission. It's mounted all straight up to the rear axle. It kind of kills the scale appearance of this, but Typically with Kyosho, if it works, they don't fix it. So this should work pretty well. Everything is kind of mounted in this rear section right here, and it kind of creates a slightly more beefiness to that rear axle. Flipping it over, you can kind of see the underside right here with the rear axle, the transmission, the motor mount, everything is kind of all in that rear section. As far as electronics, this is using a Kyosho open canned brushed motor. It's a 15 turn, and I've got to say it has a lot of power and a lot of torque. Actually run this thing in their RB 6.6 ready set 2-wheel drive buggy. This thing can definitely move. The Team Orion waterproof brushed ESC is pretty decent out of the box. It does have switchable switches to make it LiPo compatible, so it does have a LiPo cutoff. And finally, the ready to run servo inside of there, of course, is a ready to run servo. Never too impressed with any kind of RTR servo, but it at least gets you started on day one. Now to show off some comparisons for this vehicle, just to show you some other parts and vehicles that you may be familiar with, let's go ahead and look at wheels and tires right now. Now the first thing I have is a set of Hyraxes. These are the mid-size versions. These are slightly taller than the stock. You can probably get away with it. You'll probably have some fender rubbing, but if you go with the smaller Hyraxes, they'll probably fit perfectly. Here's a set of the Axial BF Goodrich All-Terrains, very close tire. You can probably get a little bit more scale look, and it'll mount to standard 1.9 inch beadlocks. And then finally, the Pitbull PBXs. These are slightly smaller. Once again, a little bit more scale tire, and it would look great. Now, as for bodies, this thing is just slightly longer, fitting that 13-inch wheelbase. Now, pretty much any of the SCX10 bodies will end up fitting. You may have to do a little bit of trimming to make it all work, but just to give you an idea, this is a cab for an SCX10. Fits on there perfectly. The bed might be just slightly off, but you get the picture. This thing can pretty much mount up most of the scale bodies out there with just a little finagling. Well guys, that is my first look at the brand new Kyosho Outlaw Rampage. I can't wait to start working on this thing. This will probably be a custom project here at the RC Network. Kind of make it my own and upgrade a few things in it just to make this thing look great out there scaling and see how fast I can really make it go and keep everything functioning together. Well guys, that is it for now. I can't wait to start on this project. I hope you guys like it. I would love your thoughts. Give me your thoughts on this platform. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Is it something you would be interested in picking up? Let me know in the comment section down below. Well guys, that is it for now. Comments, questions down below, and as always, thumbs up and subscribe. That's it for now guys. Over and out.